Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Antique Automotive Acres. It's Rusty Berg here from somewhere in southeastern Michigan. The outfit looks a little bit different today. However, the bow tie does remain. I'm actually required to wear that per a state judge appointed court order. Not really. It's just a personal choice, but the coveralls do come in handy when I'm working on projects where I might get a little bit dirty. That's a little bit of a precursor for you. I might flash a picture up here on the screen about what's going on in the shop. Meanwhile, we're back for the last video in the series on the coolant flush for Hazel, my 1906 Rio Model B. In the last video, you saw the all-exciting start. The engine does run. Yes, I strung it out, but it does run. And you also saw the after effects of the flush where I drained all the junk out of the cooling system, getting it ready for the final prep and then being topped off with no erosion and the clean water that I intend to run in this car. If you haven't watched that, why don't you go back and take a look? It's part 4 of the series, this being part 5. The other videos talk about the history of the car and Rio, the company itself, a little bit about the features of the car. We do learn, again, I like driving this point home, that it is mostly wood. Some of it is metal, but it's kind of unique in the fact that it's very close to a horse-drawn buggy than it is the cars that we're used to today. So if you have a chance, maybe go back and take a look. Like I said, we're here in the season of mud in southeastern Michigan, so I'm filming once again from my garage. Hazel is comfortably waiting for when things dry out a little bit before getting back out on the road again, and I hope to have a video in the near future where we go over a little bit more of actually driving this car and what some of the experiences are like. Before we move into the video, last part of the series where I do go into the hand crank start procedure. So part 4 used the electric starter that Hazel has been retrofitted with, but this video you'll actually see me start her like R.E. Olds intended with the hand crank. And I look back again to those who haven't seen them. These videos, this series is something I've chopped up. It was a one-day video I recorded a couple weeks ago and decided to break it up because it was going to be very long. So that's why the shop looks different. I'm wearing different clothing. Of course, the bow tie is there. Remember, state court order. That's a joke, but still. Anyway, so we lost my train of thought. Hold it, wait for it. Hand cranking. So there was something I mentioned in the video early on in the first part of the video that was going to give me trouble, and that was something called the decompression release. And I didn't quite, looking back in the footage, explain what that is. Decompression releases with these early engines, they're low compression ratio because the gas was really kind of poor quality. However, that doesn't mean that it's easy to crank through. This piston is 4 3/4 inches in diameter, which is about the size of a coffee can, and the travel is 6 inches a stroke, which, you know, depending on who you ask, varies by definition of what 6 inches actually is. However, what that means is when you actually crank this engine over, you're removing that piston, and when that intake valve closes and you start compressing that fuel-air mix, it gets really hard to continue to pull the crank through the stroke because it's just, you're bouncing off that compressing fuel-air mix. I think I describe it in the video. You'll hear me see it. Maybe I'll put a little flag up about bouncing off of compression. What this car would have had was a feature that would lock one of the valves slightly open, not all the way open because then it would never build any pressure, but enough that it was a little bit easier to crank over. And that feature on this car has been disabled. In all honesty, in talking with some Rio historians, it's a bit of monkey motion on how it actually works, and whether it worked originally or not is debatable at best. Most of the time people would just give it a hearty heave and you'll get through it, but you'll see in this video where I literally just pull up and hit and kind of just bounce off that compression. And I do go in a little bit about hand cranking safety. The compression is not what breaks hands, arms, elbows, fingers. That's when you don't time that ignition appropriately when you're hand cranking your car. I'll go over that a little bit more in the upcoming portion of the video. So before we move into that, I want to give a shout out to somebody who was very kind, another YouTuber at Half Fast Garage. He's another guy here in somewhere in southeastern Michigan. You know, that's something about this this state. The car scene is very exciting. Lots of things going on. He kindly has been plugging my channel. I'm very new to all this. Again, this is really going to be my 5th video, and he is a friend of a friend and has kindly reached out to some of his folks and said, hey, you know, this Rusty Berg guy with the antique cars, it's kind of entertaining, so I feel I should say the same. He's got a channel on YouTube, Half Fast Garage. He also is also on Instagram at Half Fast Garage, and I should plug myself a little bit, at Antique Automotive Acres. And feel free to subscribe to his channel. Give him a like. You know, take a look at his videos. He's got some interesting stuff and multiple projects going on, sort of like I do as well. It's almost like you know, you got all these things and trying to keep up with time and life. You know, it does get in the way. So, so I think, let's see, plugged his channel. Gave myself a plug at Antique Automotive Acres one more time. And with that, we're coming to the end of the Coolant Flush series with Hazel, my 1906 Rio Model B. Let's go ahead and get things started. I've drained the coolant flush and disposed of it in an appropriate manner. It's actually safe to run down the sewer drains there, according to the instructions on their website. So, top the car up with just regular straight water this time. Scope of this is to just go ahead and we drained out all the garbage, but there's probably still a little bit left, so a little bit of clean water through it. Just to flush out that last little bit of nastiness that's left over from that old contaminated coolant that was in there. And as promised, this time I'm going to do the starting procedure by hand, which is how this car, and any car really from this era of the early 1900s, really prior to 1912, would have been started. I remember hand cranks were the electric starter was not something that had been invented yet. So a lot of people, everybody who had a car, you had to learn how to hand crank your car. You also had to learn how to hand crank your car appropriately, because if you do it wrong, you really can't hurt yourself. You can break your arm, you can have it kick back and the crank come back and catch you, or if you wrap your hand around it the wrong way. So I'll show you a little bit of how to do this the right way. First thing I got to do though is, because it's, again, cold outside, I closed the garage door and it just dawned on me I need to open it back up again, because we're going to be running this car for another about 10 or 15 minutes just to get that clean water up to temp so it flushes the last of the junk out of there. So let me sneak back, open the garage door, and then we'll go ahead and get going. Right then. So, while this car was sitting, I shut the gas and the oil off, because it will dribble like any other 116-year-old person would. So step one, again, is to go ahead and turn the gas back on. So round to the front, turn the valve on, gas is flowing to the carburetor. So now I did install all the floorboards back into the car just to give you an idea of what this would be like when you got your brand new Rio from the local dealership, and what you would have to go through. So there is a tow board, or there is a front board that goes in front here. There's a latch on it. You just open it up, and like I said before, there's no oil sump in this engine. So if you run it without turning the oil on, your engine will turn into a solid block of metal. So you turn the oil on, and it just starts dripping. Now, this is your hand crank. This is what you use to actually start the car. If you look down here, hopefully you can see this. There's an interface that this just goes into that's on the crankshaft of the car. You're literally spinning the crank of the engine over by hand. So an important thing to note, when you hand crank these cars, right-handed person, typically you want to grab the crank like this, where you wrap your thumb around the outside of it. That's the fastest way to break your thumb, because if it was to kick back, it's going to kick it right through your thumb. You're not going to be able to let go. So the right way to grab it is to actually wrap your hand around it and hold it with your thumb on the other side. That way it doesn't kick back and break your thumb, which is a bad thing to have happen. So this car is cold. So the other reason why people would actually injure themselves as I look at this car is right now the timing is full advance. That means that it's firing before top dead center to get the best power out of your engine. You're not going to be able to crank through that explosion. So what people would forget to do is retard your ignition timing. Set it so that it's going to fire before top dead center. I'm going to reach and make sure my little mic receiver doesn't fall off. So you set it so it's firing before top dead center, which is known as ignition retard. Make sure it's in neutral. Honestly, I'm going to set the parking brake. Now, to help myself along, I'm going to flood the carburetor again, just like we did when it was cold. You just hold that little button down, it starts peeing gas everywhere. That's normal. And the ignition is off. The ignition's not on. What I'm doing is sucking fuel into the engine to help prime it. So, and this is one of the only times when you'll actually see me grab it like this, grab the crank like this to help spin it through compression, because this car does not have its decompression release. I need to move that 4 3/4 inch coffee can size piston through the 6-inch stroke to compress the fuel and air and get it to light off. This is why this is the hard way to do it. So you reach in, catch the knob, spin it through, it spins easy, and then you hit compression. And you see me bounce off of it and spin it through a couple times. There we go. Okay. And who thought this starter thing would ever catch on? So, the engine's got fuel in the cylinder now from me hand cranking it over with the ignition off. So, I'm going to make sure the throttle's open so it actually catches this time. The throttle is open. I turn ignition on. Now remember, ladies and gentlemen, don't ever crank it like this. That's the fastest way to break your hand. Okay, here we go. Got it engaged. Thumb on the outside. On compression. Advance your timing, and away you go. It's just that easy. Okay, folks, so we're in the home stretch, getting towards the end of the thing I'd like to do today. So what I am going to show you is the product I'm using in the cooling system in Hazel, my 1906 Rio Model B. and it's a product that was recommended to a friend by a friend of mine. It's called No Erosion. They're not paying me anything. I've got no sponsorships, or they don't even know I exist. However, I've seen how well this works in various engines. My friend's got an engine that's got an iron block and an aluminum head, which is a bad dissimilar metal combination. And usually what you get is electrolysis, where the coolant breaks down and it starts pulling ions off your metal, and it can cause corrosion and things falling apart. And this is there to actually help deal with that. So one thing to note though is it's not a replacement for antifreeze. I am only using this with straight water. You can use it with antifreeze, but this is not a replacement for antifreeze if you are running straight water. This car won't be going out in the freezing cold anytime soon, mostly because there's no heater and I have no intentions of driving in the snow, especially with these tires which have no tread on them. So it stays in a heated garage, but so no risk of the engine freezing up on me. But just as a reminder, this is not a replacement for antifreeze, so don't think it'll save your engine if you do freeze it up. So I need a swig of thinking juice. All right, it does say to mix it at 1 ounce per quart of coolant in your system. The couple times I've run water in here, it's taken about 2.5 gallons of water, which would equate to about 10 quarts. This is a 16 quart bottle. I'm going to use the full 16 just because sometimes after you run an engine, the water works its way. There's some air bubbles that might work its way out. I haven't seen anything drop in like it needed extra water after running it for the 10 or 15 minutes I have while it's been flushing. But honestly, also while these run, usually you'll get a little bit of water boiling off. I don't think this raises your boiling point any. Again, this is not antifreeze. It's just an anti-corrosion solution. So I don't think it's going to hurt to mix it up a little bit stronger. So I'm going to use the full 16 ounces in the 2.5 gallons of water. So with that, I've got last check. Yep, we'll call that good. So take our wrench, plug the plug up, tighten her down about 1 Coolant tight. Remember, it's 116 years old. Come on, camera, work with me. Hello. It's 116 years old. You don't want to over tighten things. These weren't made with torque specifications, so don't get in there and reef on things. You'll end up breaking it. So, all right, that is about it. Okay, as promised, I've got enough room cleared. I'm going to move Hazel under her own power. Why push when now she's got plenty of coolant ready to run, ready to go. So I will cheat and use the easy method to get her started. And then we'll park her and call it a day. So let's go. Make sure I close the hood. Go ahead and turn the gas on. Crack the door open because carbon monoxide is not fun. And now, let's see, ignition timing's retarded. We'll just see if she starts. Oil on. Don't forget to turn your oil on. So, all right. Brake is off, and a little bit of throttle, engage low gear. And then slam on the brake before I hit my camera. So there we are, folks. A coolant flush on a 1906 Rio Model B. Extricate myself. All right, so the adult beverage is acquired. Thanks for watching today. If you liked what you saw, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Go ahead and push that little bell icon there. I think that does some black magic with the algorithms for a guy who's trying to get maybe a new channel started here. Comment below if you've got any questions or concerns or comments about what you saw me do, and feel free to tell me what you liked and disliked. I apologize in advance for my camera skills. They're not the greatest. It's just me here, and I'm still trying to figure all this out. Also, I apologize for my editing in advance because I know I have to stitch some things together. Let me know if there's something specific you'd like to learn or like to see, and you know, tune in next time for another fun adventure here at the Antique Automotive Acres. Cheers.